So one of the things that we are, our intention is around is bringing expertise from outside industry as we know it, and from all of the work that's being done from our sister organizations and the other certifications that are around. So we're going to shift our conversation a little bit, but what we're really going to do right now is we're going to take a really strong shot at what the consumer mindset is by introducing Alan Lewis, who is the Director of Special Projects for Natural Grocers, a 60-year-old health food store chain which operates 85 stores in 14 western and midwestern states. 14 store locations in Texas, and a national retail company that sells only foods and supplements with natural and organic ingredients. So Alan, you have done a lot of work on your site in terms of teaching your customers what natural and organic is. Tell me what you think is the biggest source of confusion for people who walk in your stores, or have you solved the problem when we just need to adopt your standard?
Wow, there's so many sources of confusion. I can't even narrow them down, right? I will say that the biggest risk of setting a natural standard is it's not strong enough, and customers like mine feel betrayed by that standard once they pull back the sheets and see what's been done there. Really bad metaphor. So by way of example, organic dairy takes a beating with our customers. We have 2 organic dairies in Colorado near our headquarters, and our customers are vocally dismissive of them. So partly in response to that, we've established our own grass-fed non-confinement dairy standard, and that requires a great deal of research, of working with companies and education and pushback and back and forth. And ultimately, when you have an informed customer down to the nitty-gritty details of what's happening at your suppliers, then there's a great deal of confidence. But you can't get halfway and expect the consumer to come along.
That's a really good observation. So if they're halfway and they're going to walk away from products, does that mean that your consumers are educated enough to understand the corporate culture of those companies? I'm not going to name anybody by names, but are they asking for certain criteria from the people that they buy goods from? Are you seeing a trend towards that level of sophistication among purchasing?
Yeah, I think I understand where you're getting at. Let me stick with dairy since I started there. We're talking about where are those cows right now? Where are those pastures? Do they have pastures? Is there GMO alfalfa on those pastures? This, in my opinion, and my customer's opinion, should be all part of that conversation. The dodge, I would say, of banned ingredients list defining natural just doesn't cut it among my customers. Now, we consider them to be very headstrong, opinionated, and kind of elite customers in a sense, even though we don't tend toward the affluent end of the market. But just telling them that hormone-free milk is natural, they'd have a good chuckle over that and then never talk to us again.
What about the companies that own organic products but also produce products that would not be eligible to be in your store?
Yeah, I'm not very popular at the OTA, let's just put it that way.
Okay, that says that much. So there's one criticism I continue to hear, which is there are enough seals in the world to support any definition of any food or product, good or service that you would want to have. So why would we want another seal? And that essentially if we did decide to put another seal out, which we are committed to doing, that all we would actually be doing is confusing the consumer and the customer even more. Can you speak to that?
I think that whole line of thought's a red herring. And I've done surveys of 20,000 customers, got a good response rate, and we take a blank box and we start adding all of these seals and claims, and customers like to know as much as possible, but they're very discerning about what different seals mean and whether they value them. Nevertheless, more seals are better, but for instance, organic, far and above, it's probably the most trusted seal right now. But that doesn't mean that USDA inspected doesn't carry some weight with a consumer. That's why I think it's a red herring. We need to give people credit for, their kindergarten training of what that colored dot means versus what the green square might mean.
And to that end, do you see a change in the demographic of that customer? I mean, we often speak of those people who are already educated, as we have talked about today, in terms of what it is they want to buy off the shelf. And we know that people are constantly grappling with whether they want locally sourced versus organic versus non-GMO versus grass-fed. But are you seeing a change in the demographic of your store in terms of the kinds of people who are coming in, whether it's age, millennium, those types of things that we're all dying to know?
So it really cuts across all those psychodemographic clusters or segments. What brings our customers together is this keen focus on nutrition. We have a lot of refugees from the food industry, from the medical community, people who have serious long-term chronic diseases, maybe autoimmune, maybe gluten sensitivity, allergies, chemical sensitivities. They're not messing around. This is not some philosophical hip trend that they want to get on board. They have to be very careful about the ingredients in their food. Now, beyond that, philosophically, at that point, they want to know how a cow was treated, how long it lived, and how its calves were treated and what they were fed. But ultimately, what's bringing people to health food and to natural is a health imperative and a nutrition imperative.
And I would be remiss if I didn't ask the question in the room, which is harder? My personal take is that pet food is the most egregious offender of the use of the term natural. But which is harder to define in your book, in your store, whether it's dietary supplements, food, household cleaning products? Can you do them all, or are we embarking on something that we're going to have such unique challenges that we will be redefining ourselves at every point?
You can certainly do them all, but as everyone has mentioned and will continue to mention, it has to do with transparency. If you have a body care product that requires a particular relatively safe preservative in a relatively small amount, customers can accept that. That's different than not paying attention to types of preservatives or amounts at all. And what I would predict is in body care, for instance, there will be refrigerated products that don't have any preservatives because certain customers are just getting to that point where they can't tolerate anything. But yeah, it can be done in every segment.
So much like the organic standard, which has its own exceptions to the rules, do you think there might be a way, or perhaps even a measurement tool, just to speculate and take that question probably further down the panel, like is there a percentage that you could associate, and would customers be responding to something that was it's 80%, 79%, 94%?
Oh no, they don't buy that.
Oh.
You either have a standard or you don't, right? But within that, the organic national list, which I think is what you're referring to, it's supposed to improve over time. There's new research being done, new methods, new knowledge being brought in, and that's supposed to get cleaner and purer. Now, certain people don't see it that way, probably including the USDA. But if you are providing that research, providing the rationale, and actually improving things over time, I think that's the standard becomes a living standard and becomes a consensus, but as opposed to a consensus just of industry or retail, it's just a consensus of consumers.
So many of these questions are just right off the top of my head, including this one, but as a retailer, how do you see a trade association like Organic and Natural, or specifically Organic and Natural, playing a role in the advocacy efforts you're talking about around research or around the definition organic? Has there been a collaboration that you have seen that has been successful, or are there words of wisdom you can impart to us in terms of how we can work in a collaborative and transparent environment with retailers like yourself?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Absolutely, especially ONHA, just absolutely complete faith that this will work out like that. But seriously, I mean, all the trade associations and trade people who, I'm involved in 5 or 6 trade organizations very actively, and there's a reason for that. It's trading information, it's looking at trends, it's reaching a consensus. The fact that we have so many that seem to be competing in this arena for a natural standard is probably the first challenge. I think that's probably your first challenge, and you understand that. But flipping the question around, could we do without some sort of organization or set of organizations? No, because then you just get into a free-for-all in chaos.
And you've been at this a long time. I mean, I know where Todd and Joe stand on this issue, that there's been some interesting polling going on across the dietary supplement world about who should be responsible for documenting the definition of natural, and in some corners people actually think that should be Congress or the agency. What's your perspective on that?
I think that consumers will set that standard. Honestly, when it comes to dietary supplements, there's so many big established companies with different agendas that they're not philosophically or technically capable of looking at these issues from the consumer's point of view.
Fair enough.
There, I said it.
You did. You did. Off the hot seat you go.